All right. Good evening, Catholic YouTube. Brian with City of the Immaculata. I didn't know how light or dark I was going to be here this evening, but looks like y'all can see me anyways. So just trying something a little bit different, joining y'all in the evening. This is my much belated attempt to finish up a little conversation that I was having with you guys 3 months ago at this point, I think. I can't even remember. I was having a little sermon. I was preaching that night, and 2, 3, 4 minutes into the sermon, somebody kindly let me know in the chat that my microphone wasn't working, which, if I converted anybody, it was maybe the dog on the couch because nobody else heard what I had to say that evening. For some reason, the microphone cut off that night. I don't know why. So I'm going to attempt to finish some of what I was saying that night. Honestly, I kind of lost that train a while ago, so we'll see how far I even get with that. Besides that, I just wanted to offer anything to you guys, anything you guys wanted to talk about. I'm going to assume I probably won't get that many people joining tonight. So I have a few ideas of some things that I can cover. Try to avoid giving you guys bad advice. I usually come here with a bullet point notes that I don't really didn't offer myself tonight. So we'll see how well I do off the cuff. Believe it or not, I actually really do try to limit myself, even though I don't know what it looks like to you guys. Maybe it looks like a very broad scope of things that I um, maybe it looks like a broad thing of things that I cover on this channel, but I really do try to like limit myself to very specific things that I feel properly adept, conversant at. I do see a lot of people online that will give takes on anything. The AMA ask me anything, and well, as tempting as that is at times, I feel like while just sitting here and going off, unscripted, maybe I could gain more followers by that method, but I don't know. I feel like there's a glut of bad advice, and I just don't want to add to it. So I just really do try to limit myself with these things. But going back to the great, and I keep wanting to call her Ayn Rand. And if I say Ayn Rand, forgive me. I'm not speaking about the little Russian Jewish woman Ayn Rand that wrote about capitalism. I'm meaning to say Ayaan Hirsi Ali. And Ayaan Hirsi Ali, gosh, she made waves almost 20 years ago at this point, I would imagine. She was a Somalian refugee, I believe Somalian refugee into Holland. Maybe I'm wrong about that. I think it was, or maybe it was Belgium. Anyways, she ends up getting involved with Theo Van Gogh, who was the nephew of the famous Vincent Van Gogh, and they did some work talking about some of the radical elements. This was 2003, 2004. There was a lot of discussion about Islam and radical Islam at that point. So she gets involved with Theo Van Gogh. Theo Van Gogh was knifed down on the streets of Holland, wherever they were from. It might even have been Amsterdam within. So somebody, if any of you guys know, correct me on where exactly this happens at. But she was involved with him making some work criticizing Islam. Very, very outspoken atheist herself. Was involved with Hitchens, Dawkins, the so-called four horsemen of the apocalypse. So recently, several months ago, she releases that she has gone through this conversion process. She has publicly came out as a Christian, which for those of us that remember her all of those years ago, it's quite a shock to hear that. Not totally unsurprising given some of the things that I've read about her, but still quite a shock if you knew when she was more of a public figure some of the things about her. She spoke quite passionately against religion qua religion. But it seems that a good, at least the letter that I read, a huge portion of her conversion process was actually due to the fact that she saw the way in which Christianity, as the sort of cultural normative, unifying force of Western civilization. And there's quite a bit of people criticizing her for that. And the thing that I was speaking about last time when my microphone cut out was just the extent to which I see this happening a lot online, and I've seen quite there's something happening right now. I don't know if you guys are seeing this. I just right before I came online here, I saw that Candace Owens has converted to the faith. We at our own parish in this last year, this last Easter, brought in, gosh, I want to say maybe upwards of 15 to 20 catechumens, which is probably a record for our parish. I've heard that that has happened in some other places around the country. I've heard there were some record numbers in France. There's something in the air, right? There's something in the air right now. I'm not quite for sure what's going on. I wouldn't be. I've heard some uh speculation, some guessings, maybe some things that are coming in the aftermath of COVID and people looking for spiritual nourishment, which that wouldn't surprise me at all. But there's something in the air, but there's quite a few people that when they're going through this process, I guess it's just the nature of the way that social media works these days. There is a highly publicized there's a highly publicized conversions that are taking place. Now, I think back to my own conversion. My own conversion, and I'm just going to speak to this. I've got it slated for in maybe a month or so. I can't remember where I'm going to tell my own conversion story. It's taken me a while to bring myself to actually get to that point of wanting to tell it, but I don't know. What are you talking about? Are you, the Quran says Brock Adams to achieve world government is necessary to me. Don't be trolling my chat. I don't know, Tarot Destroyer, whoever you are, if you're trolling. I'm not for sure the point you're making. But, anyways, so the point I was making, I get derailed so easy. My own conversion process was a very slow, it was years in the making. And I'm at this point, I am 11 years in the Catholic faith, and I still don't feel like I have gone completely through the conversion process. I constantly feel like there's growth, and it's this never-ending thing that I'm going through. And so when I see these people online and they're so public about their spiritual journey, and they're quite a few of them are getting a lot of feedback, and I can't imagine what that feels like for a person new to the faith. And there's a little bit of it that like worries me. For Ayan specifically, there's quite a lot of people kind of attacking her, going after her, going after her for saying that she's converting for oh my gosh, do I is this just like going to be there's quite a few people going after her for saying that her conversion isn't authentic, that she is converting for reasons of yeah, I don't know who they are, Dan. I'm like trying to stay focused here, but that the reason that she's converting is because of this utilitarian reason, right? Because she's saying that that she loves the West, and she's come to the realization that the foundation of the West is built on a Christian foundation, and undermining that foundation and thinking that the West is going to survive without it. So therefore, she's converted. And look, I'm not saying that's the best reason to convert to Christianity, but at the same time, I know what the process is like. It's not a pretty thing. It's not a clear cut, like, for most people, it's like years of like challenging yourself and being challenged by other people, and you're feeling the pull to this way and feeling the pull that way, and for this reason, that reason. It's gonna be so hard if it's gonna be like this. I don't know who these people are. Um, I used to have somebody here that would mod the chat, but I've never actually had to have a chat moderator really. So, yeah, anyways, guys, my point that I was finishing up with Ayaan Hirsi Ali was that she needs to be allowed to go through this process, as does everybody. And I'm seeing like there was the young lady who is on Twitter. I can't think of her name off the top of my head. You guys would probably know who I'm talking about. She was involved in the adult industry. She's converted to Catholicism and she's getting quite a following. And again, I can't imagine what that's like. Now she seems to be like she's posting a lot of material, but for me, I honestly think that I think for if in the perfect like Brian church, if I had my way, I would put like a um one, I don't think that you should speak about the faith. That's right, Dan, Miss B. Uh Miss B was her name. I d- eh, I think these people mean well, but if you've just converted and let's say you have a YouTube channel or some other social media platform and you're speaking for the faith, like again, I'm 11 years in and I still don't feel, and I've done quite a bit of studying, and I still don't feel like I am adequate to be able to tell you guys about this faith. I talk about the things that I love and that I'm passionate about and that I care about within the faith, but for me to be any kind of spokesperson, it's like I worry for my own soul at times because I don't want to lead you guys astray. I don't want to be responsible for scandalizing somebody and leading them astray. I don't want to, I mean, any numerous things that I could do that where this whole thing could go wrong. God willing, everybody comes into the faith. That's kind of my goal with all of this. But it's so easy, and even just to get kind of like puffed up and let's say people start coming into the faith because of the work that you're doing, to become like prideful about that, and to be getting all of this praise. I mean, Satan is so tricky, and he will use any avenue that he can to get at you and to bring you down and to cause your demise. And so, I mean, the major point that I wanted to make with Ayan is to like, whenever you see somebody, I mean, she's a high profile figure. She's probably not paying attention to what most people are saying about her, anyways. But whenever you see these people, like, you gotta give them a lot of grace and you gotta give them a lot of space. And if you see them slipping up, if you see them making mistakes, I mean, God bless Candace Owens. She's a high profile um public figure, and she's gonna say some wrong things. I mean, she's gonna say things that are out of place. And I don't think that anybody who is in her position, um or in the position of like a who's another one? Oh, there's one, Russell Brand, right? And I know there's some controversy around what he's going through, but look, I'm not gonna speak to this guy, or like, oh, what's the other guy's name? Shia LaBeouf is his name. Um, there's some controversy around him as well, and why was he converting, and what's the purpose and meaning? Or the other one, oh gosh, man, there's so many people converting right now. This one wasn't to Catholicism, but there's the other adult star. I can't think of her name right now. She's got like this shock red hair. Somebody would know her name. It looked like from what I saw, she may be converted to some evangelical church. But anyways, there's a whole lot of people coming after her, and there's like so many people that are seem to be like they're on the side, like cheering her. Yeah, the red-haired one. There's so many people, like, cheering her on, which is good. But there's also a lot of people that are, like, waiting and, like, they're salivating for her to, for her to slip up and for her demise. And, I mean, look, conversion is a process. These things take time. There's no way that we're going to, like, none of us are gonna get to the other side of this and the road to salvation unscathed. And so I just say we gotta offer these people a lot of grace. Ayan has made some good points from what I've seen, you know? I mean, she's starting to look at just some of the categorical mistakes that people like Dawkins have made that we've been calling out for these people for a long time. And I'm glad it's starting to sync with it. Actually, even seems like it's syncing with something's happening within that brain of Dawkins because he's been making some interesting comments recently. Because the reality is, if there is no God, then all morality is ultimately fake. Right? And I know I'm not like saying anything groundbreaking there. Like we as religious people, we're quite aware of that. Even religion as a natural virtue and some of the things that it tries to enculturate in men's hearts. Our lives are not. I try to put. I've never actually been an atheist. I wouldn't even have categorized myself as an agnostic. I've always believed in God, but I try to put myself into that shoes and what that actually looks like, and trying to think about what like the consequences of a completely amoral universe, and the fact that all morals at that point would be ultimately illusory, and the concept. I don't see any way around the fact that if that were the case, if there was no God and this is all the entire universe is self-contained and this is all a natural process and there's no afterlife, there's no consequence to all of this. Every 100 years we're just flushed out and there's a new group of living organisms that come and go. The consequences to that are quite catastrophic, and the consequences just to morality and just how fragile that makes our morality is kind of mind. And I would say like somebody like a Dawkins or any of these other people, like Hitchens was quite nasty at times about it, but Dawkins could be pretty snide himself. These people that like actually say that you can have um these moral groundings with the kind of like a Matt Dillahunty, right? These guys that say that they don't have to have any justifications for their moral groundings. Well, eventually these people have to come and answer to a new generation that comes up. And one of the things that really seems to have triggered Dawkins is he, as a biologist, is convinced that sex is a binary, and he says it's one of the few binaries that we find in nature, but he's having to have philosophical debates with these young people that have come up in the wake of 20 plus years of the ideology that he's been pushing for the last 20 years. There's consequences to the way that we raise our children when they become adults. So now you have these people that are challenging the clear binary that we find in nature, and they're imposing this capital T illusory on the rest of reality. So let's see what we got here in some of the chats. I got some chats going on. Alana. Hi, Alana. Good to see you there. I watched a video where Ayan also said that when she imagined what a good and loving God would be, her therapist told her, and she found that her description aligned with our Lord. I must have missed that part. That's actually kind of an interesting thing. You know, conversion is an interesting thing, and I love actually hearing people's conversion stories, and it's the reason I'm willing to tell my own. I've been hesitant to tell it just because I try to avoid talking about myself as much as I possibly can, but I do say that the whole process of conversion is just a fascinating thing, and so many people have just different ways in which um, they've come to the and specifically come into the Catholic faith. I do find that a lot of the conversion stories that I've seen tend to be people that have converted from Protestantism. That's not my own story, so maybe I'll be able to offer something a little bit different. I don't even know how you would categorize what I converted from, but it wasn't Protestantism, it wasn't nothing, it wasn't atheism. I don't know. So I'll tell that story and you guys tell me what you think. There's a meme, "Now that religion is behind us, we can finally focus on making progress with rationality." Train crashes pregnant men, and um, the sad fact of it is that, well, you know what? There's a great I know some people I've seen some people criticizing Chesterton, recently, which just tugs at my heart because 'cause I've always loved Chesterton. There's some chapters in Orthodoxy for anybody that says rationality is the solution to mankind's ills. Read the chapters "The Maniac and the Ethics of Elfland" in Chesterton, and then get back to me, and we'll have that conversation. The other thing is too that anybody that says that rationality, and I know you're being facetious with the meme here, but anybody that thinks that rationality solves the ills of mankind is a person that clearly hasn't studied the early 20th century and all that that brought onto us, which is kind of another thing that I was going to talk about because I don't really get into politics too much in this show, but I've seen gosh, there was something. Oh, it was the debate is going on online for those of you that aren't aware about the dropping of the atomic bomb in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And that's always one that I've found to be an interesting conversation, especially since becoming Catholic. I've had to reevaluate my I used to historically have the assessment that many Americans have that it was justified to end the war until I was challenged by the Catholic faith and Catholic ethics to question those assumptions. But if you guys would allow me just to kind of nerd out on history and politics for a minute, I will say that there's an interesting thing that took place. Generally on this channel, I try to stick to like even so much as the history is involved, I try to stick to like the Catholic related subjects, but I'm also super interested. I've long been a like military buff and military strategy. And one of the things that's kind of interesting that happened in the last 200 years was well, with the change of technology, right? So Napoleon kind of upended the way that we view warfare. And with his with his strategies of maneuvering men on a battlefield, uh, after Napoleon, everybody wanted to emulate that. And that became like he became the standard bearer for how to conduct a war. The problem was that after Napoleon, in the let's just say the interim between like the Napoleonic Wars and the Civil War in the United States, the war between the states in the United States, which was another. I mean, that was a major catastrophic war just in terms of the sheer numbers of people that we lost. The problem in the interim period between that was the invention of the Manet ball. And the Manet ball was this tiny, like round um, piece of ammunition that was invented that revolutionized warfare. Unfortunately for the men that fought in the Civil War, especially at the beginning, nobody quite realized how much it revolutionized warfare. Because when the Civil War, if you notice when the Civil War started, and I was like, I'm raised in Virginia, so I'm surrounded by Civil War history stuff. When the Civil War started, you have all of these like the generals, you have Jackson and McClellan, all of these guys coming out of West Point, and in West Point they were all taught Napoleonic strategy, and they're all trying to emulate that, and they're trying to like maneuver men around First Manassas, in the Shenandoah campaign, in Fredericksburg, Chancellorsville, all of these different, like in Antietam, all of these battles, they're trying to maneuver men, and men are getting slaughtered wholesale, like across the board. Men are, I'm probably any females that I had in the audience, I probably lost them at this point talking about war history, but that's like my one female fan, she's gone. But like when you change the military technology, but you don't change the strategy, there's some real like ramifications and consequences for these things. So the Manet ball was extremely damaging on the battlefield. When you got hit with it, it had this ability to like explode and just damage bones, and like it was extremely deadly. So by the time that you end the Civil War. The Civil War ends in Petersburg. And if you notice, and I don't really hear this talked about very much, if you noticed, the war in the States ends with trench warfare. Petersburg, they were entrenched. They finally realized towards the end of the war that there was a reason to entrench yourselves and to stop moving like to stop moving men around on the battlefield like you're still in the days of Napoleon, because they're just getting slaughtered by the tens of thousands. So when you get to World War One, after the Civil War, World War One becomes an issue where it's very much a trench warfare, and there seems to be like no way out of it. At the very end of World War One, you see the tank beginning to be introduced, and the tank is the first time that they're able to sort of like break through. The tank, the revolution in technology between World War One and World War Two is pretty astronomical. So by the time you get to World War Two, tank technology is like just an amazing thing. Um, and then you get like a Rommel in the desert of North Africa and all of the fighting that he's doing. And they're almost back again in that Napoleonic strategy. And there's a lot of this, like you get like the Pattons who want to have that glory in warfare, the MacArthurs, but there's also the element of the Cold War starting to brew. And that I think is the key. This is my long-winded way of coming back around to the atomic bomb. With the coming of the Cold War, the United States knew that the next thing that we were going to be looking at was a conflict with the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union probably should have been the one that we went to war with, anyways. That's a long subject, but we didn't end up going to war with the Soviet Union. But the United States saw that coming. So when they dropped the bomb, one of the really interesting things, tragic things, but interesting as well, is that when they first dropped it on Hiroshima, there was no like, we will give you 48 hours, we will give you 72 hours, whatever it would be. Like, we will give you this amount of time to like go check it out, see what happened, see what happened, and then come back and give us your response. It was, we're going to drop this one, and before you can even have a chance to surrender, I think the second bomb was within the first 48 hours, if not the first 24 hours, if I'm not mistaken. They dropped the second bomb. And I was raised, when I was taught World War II history, that the reason that they dropped the second bomb was because Japan didn't surrender. They never gave Japan time to surrender. The second bomb wasn't dropped to convince Japan to surrender. The second bomb was dropped so that the USSR was made aware that the bomb that we dropped on Hiroshima wasn't a one-off, and that we had more than one. Because if we had one, that could have been a fluke. But if we had two, there was a very good chance that we had more. So we were showing the Soviet Union. So the casualties, for all intents and purposes, of Nagasaki were basically a show of force to another country, which, if you stop to think about the reality of that, I mean, it's all speculative at this point. There's no way for us to know, but the more humane thing to do, if there's even anything humane to do with around the fact that we dropped an atomic bomb, would have been to drop the first atomic bomb and then wait for the response. Give Tokyo. Tokyo's not next to Hiroshima, right? You need to have time to send the people down to get, because there was my understanding is that it took several days for the reports to filter out of Hiroshima back to Tokyo, so that the government had, like, because it was kind of like, well, what in the world just happened down there, right? Like, they weren't even totally for sure what had happened. So yeah, I don't think that the dropping of the second bomb, I don't think it had anything to do with the Jap. Maybe slightly, maybe it was enough to like, hey, if you guys aren't convinced, here you go, here's the second one. Maybe there was a little bit of that involved. But I think the major thing that they were trying to prove with the dropping of the second bomb was to convince the Soviet Union that it wasn't just a one-off thing, that we were actually now a nuclear armed power. You guys would probably be surprised. I am like, when it comes to my politics on these things, like, I have absorbed the Catholic faith as much as I, like, possibly can, and I really do try, and this is one of the ones I feel like, the dropping of the atomic bomb, um I've seen significant, like, there's been, like, a pivot with, especially within Catholic circles. You still get the kind of, I mean, Matt Walsh acts like a boomer sometimes, man, I swear. I don't dislike Matt Walsh, but I would say for the most part, like, progressive and traditionalist in the spectrum there, most Catholics seem to be pretty good about their assessment of the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombs as being a moral travesty and a moral catastrophe. And it's hard for Americans, right? Because as Americans, we want to, like, yeah, you want to support your country and you want to think that your country did the right thing, but there's no way around it, guys. Like, America, for those, I'm an American, and I'm not one of those, like, Catholics that likes to hate America. I actually love the United States. I think there's a lot of good about the United States. But there's just the reality is we dropped one of the most devastating pieces of warfare technology that's ever been invented. We are the ones that use that upon a people, and I have to wonder, had Germany, had things been reversed and Tokyo surrendered first, and Germany was the one that looked like they weren't going to surrender, would we really have dropped the bomb on Germany? I wonder about that. Like, if it was, instead of Hiroshima, if it was like Wittenberg or, somewhere like that, would we still have dropped the bomb if it had been on a European country? I don't know. I have my doubts about that. There's a little bit of the exotic in the Orient that made it feel to most Americans like it was distant and far off. And I do agree with, I see Sheepdog here says that there was a little bit of thirst for revenge at there. I mean, there was so much. Um, Oh, you're gonna challenge my Pacific Theater, but there was a lot of, there was a lot of, just Pearl Harbor alone, but not just Pearl Harbor. The Pacific Theater was quite gnarly and nasty for American soldiers, and there was a lot of people that wanted revenge for the things that was happened in the Pacific Theater and for what the Japanese had done at some of those battles. So yeah, let's see what else. I see we got some suggestions here. Atomic Bomb. Hey, look at that. We're talking to the Atomic Bomb. Candace Owens. Talked a little bit about Candace. I think the main thing, and I see you got there too, protecting converts. I think that the main thing when it comes to converts, the best way that we can protect them is to get them offline as much as possible. And I know there's a wonderful. I mean, I don't know if any of you guys ever get, like, I feel like a certain uneasiness when I see people, um, when they start piling on to converts in these, like, comment sections and things like that, where somebody converts, and it's like, I don't, I think people mean well, but when you are a public figure and you convert and you're getting, I think they call it love bombing or something like that, right? Like, where you just, it's just this overwhelming, like, just filling these people up. There needs to be some humility and some humbleness, and honestly, guys, like, especially as Catholics, we cannot forget that ours is a penitential faith. And there's some real baggage, man, that a lot of us carry. Now, I see, I don't know if you're asking about what we're talking about, Sheepdog, if you're unaware. She just announced that she converted. She recently came into the Catholic faith. So I don't know if that's what you're asking, what we're talking about. Besides that, I know she's a controversial character. I think she means well. She's got some, I don't know, silly takes on some things, but um when you're a right wing pundit and you don't follow the right wing line, they're going to malign you, 100% of the way, anyways. But overall, I think Candace she's fine enough. Um, But yeah, we are a penitential faith, guys, and I think that, I see what you're talking about. Yeah, that's a good that's an interesting thing to talk about. I don't wanna get this channel tanked, though, if I have to bring up the J question here. Um, I don't know what's going on with over there at the, Daily Wire. I feel like some of those guys, man, I don't know how old Ben Shapiro is. I think Matt Walsh is probably about my age. There's definitely, I know there's a lot of problems with the Gen Z and some of the generation that's coming up under Gen Z. But I give you guys that are that age a lot of credit, man, because the millennials, man, we didn't have access to this stuff that you guys have access to, man. And I don't know how old any of you guys are in the chat right now, but I do have quite a few. I look at the analytics on my channel, man, and I have a lot of Gen Z followers, which is kind of an interesting. It's almost all male and almost all Gen Z, which is an interesting thing to me that that's where my followers, at least as far as the YouTube analytics is showing me. But man, you guys have access to a lot more information than what we had. We had limited, even so much as we had the internet, we still had very limited access to resources and research and things. And I would have loved to have had access to some of the things that we have now. And some of you young guys coming up having access to all of this stuff. But the consequence of that is, man, is that again, like if you look at the way that Matt Walsh talks about um the atomic bomb, he's coming from that, like, look, from World War, from this that silent generation to the boomers to Gen X, the millennials, the my gen, we were raised on this is what America had to do to end the war. That's all we ever knew. I was never challenged on it until I became a Catholic and I was exposed to some information online. So the whole like the whole like Christ is King thing, I don't understand like where some of that sprang from. I know that there's I have less to say about the J element to it. I would have more to say about the um country, that other country that Ben Shapiro represents that's not America. I don't I've never been. I know it's sort of popular now to be against that country. I have for a long time been skeptical of the United States ties with that country in the Middle East and some of the blowback that the ties that we've had with that country. It's nothing like personal against that country or the people of that country. It's just I've always had a little bit of an isolationist streak in me. You guys want to know some of my politics? I come from like a Pat Buchanan, um, paleo conservative, like much of the isolationist or at least non-intervention. Let's just say non-intervention. Isolationist has a little bit of a negative connotation, but non-interventionist. So that's a country that's gotten us involved in a lot of intervention in the Middle East. And Ben Shapiro to me just comes across as that like old school, like I'm gonna protect the reputation of that country first and foremost over anything else, and that's kind of the sense that I get with it. And I know there's like just the fact of what that country is. There's the religious element tied into it, but censorship needs to be enacted against anti-Catholic resources. Hey, you're speaking my language there. Uh, most people here would probably be like pretty incensed with some look, because I was just listening to the other day. There was a clip. I didn't watch the whole interview, but there was a clip with Tucker Carlson on Joe Rogan. And what was he saying? He was saying that the I'm trying to remember exactly how he put it, but he was talking about how the left has control over the oh, I can't remember. It was something about the left has control over the way that laws are passed or something like that, and how it's not like they don't allow for the democratic process. And honestly, I don't really care about the democratic process too much. I don't. I'm not. I am not a populist. I think that right is right and wrong is wrong. And were you to give me were you to ask me to create my perfect political system, I would have very little, at least on a national level, um, input from the people at large. So here's the ultimate question, right? Should we be against democracy as it is in America? I think this is the distinction that I would make here, sheepdog. I think that democracy, much like say something like distributin distributionism, is much more effective when it's on a local level. When you get to a national or a state or national level, it's much harder to have informed voters. And I don't think that most people are capable, responsible, care, whatever it is. Um, they're not equipped to be able to handle the kind of weight and necessity for which it's um, incumbent upon us to have a democratically in a democratic process within the government. So if you're asking me, I think yeah, on your local level, people should have a say on things. I even say if you were to like make me have to have some kind of popular representation, I would make like the House. If it were my system, I would make like the House of Representatives. That would be like the peak of representative government. Give the people the House of Representatives so there's a voice. You know, there is some kind of voice that penetrates into the halls of Congress. If you were to ask me to talk about like beyond that, I would and this would be a controversial opinion maybe for some of you guys, but I would make the Senate for life. I would not make Senate elected. I would make it for life appointments, and I would make the Senate the one who appoints the president, and the president would probably be for life as well. So I would probably lose some of you with that. But the other thing about that too, going back to what I was initially talking about, was I am not for a system of government that represents secularism as such, as this like supposedly clean slate, where all parties have a vested interest and we're working together. No, there's no such thing. There's honestly no such thing as that on a practical level. One side's always going to win. And if history is an indicator of anything, the so-called progressives are to give the progressives their due. They're nonstop. They do not give up until they get their way. I was just talking about there was some piece of legislation. I was talking about this with my wife today or yesterday. I can't remember. And but we were saying like there was some kind of referendum or something that was put up and it didn't pass. And it's like, yay, that didn't pass. But they don't stop with that, right? And this is the problem with progressivism and democratic government. They don't just say, okay, we didn't get our way. You guys just go on. You win. They don't get their way, and the next thing you know, 2, 3 years later, they're putting out another bill. Or they're trying it again, and they're trying it again, and again, until they get their way. And then once they get their way, then it's over, right? Then there's no more discussion on it. Then at a certain point, you have to have the the legislative branch, or excuse me, the judicial branch come in and enforce, like we did with just recently with the overturn of Roe v. Wade, which is a totally different discussion. But um, yeah, no, I would say when it comes to um, the character. So my assumption here when I'm saying that the Senate should be for life, my other assumption about all of this stuff is that it should also be a Christian government, and I say that unapologetically. I would love to have I would love to have solid Orthodox Catholic Christians in the Senate for life. done with it. And that's the end of discussion, right? So I have a little bit of an authoritarian streak within me, but it's for the general good of uh of the people is in my heart, right? But yeah, no, I would say 100% we should have a. And now the other thing too is like, okay, well then what? This is like historically a Protestant country. Well, yeah, I would be willing to compromise. Let's have the Protestants, the historic, Reformed, Anglican, whatever Protestants. I would accept them in Congress, right? Anything but what we have of these like so-called secular, which is really just a front for degenerate atheists to push out of Christianity as much as they possibly can. Uh, and I would, within that system of government, I would say that we should have protections for certain religious minorities. I'm all for that, but they should only have minor representation within the government. They shouldn't actually, the government should be Christian. It should be a Christian government. I'm behind that all the way. Let's see what we have here. And I would agree with you, Dan. It has to be, but I think we have to. It's like, well, what does life imitate politics, or does politics imitate life? And I do believe that the people, um, you need to have like a formed people, to make these kind of like proper decisions. Like even to get the good, like let's say how many people are in Congress, right? However many hundreds of people are in Congress. Um, is it 100 and what? I can't remember. But anyways, you take those and you make them let's say 90% Christian with a few representatives of some others. And I think with the passing of laws with the majority Christian, like truly, and I'm talking Orthodox Christian here, with all of the elements that come with that, sociologically as well as and the political realm, a truly Christian majority, I think that we could actually pass laws that would in turn later affect the character of the people. There's going to be a lot of people that would complain and cry and whine because they're not getting their degenerate ways anymore. But c'est la vie to them, man. Such is life. And once the ultimate thing about secularism, this is what I think that a lot of people don't really understand. One, secularism's not going to win. Secularism, as if it just means like a clean, a open free for all where we all just hold hands and sing kumbaya and get along, that's not going to last. It's not going to be. One side or the other is going to win eventually, and it's either going to be our side or it's going to be their side. Which would you rather it be? That's my take on it all. A Christian aristocratic republic with localism as its main priorities. 100% Crusader for the Dawn. I would agree with that. And I'm not against yeah, I know there's a lot of like the monarchy guys out there. I don't think monarchy would fit the US. Speaking of the character of the people, like Dan was saying, I don't think monarchy would necessarily fit the character of the US people, but an aristocratic republic, 100%. I think we could totally live with that. With the sort of the mindset of subsidiarity, where like let's say people were very much involved in who their local sheriff is, right? That's an important thing. Most people are concerned about who the president is when that has little effect on their day-to-day lives. What they should really be concerned about is who their local sheriff is. And I would enculturate that. That would be the thing to like push for people. And then on a um on a national level, it would be more about things like, um, incentivizing, I mean, I would have so many different platforms. That would be a totally different topic, but I think you guys get what I'm saying there. I don't remember how I got onto the subject. All right. Just running through the thoughts on, say, a Franco style government. It's a good question. I think if I'm given the option, when things get really bad, and I don't know, there's been a big difference historically between the politics of Europe and the politics of the United States. The United States is much more prone to centrism than Europe has. Europe can get pretty wild and pretty extreme at times, at least from our like American eyes. Sometimes we look over at Europe as Americans and we're like, "What the heck are you guys thinking?" And that continues right up to this very day. But when do you get to the extremes and the extreme options are all that's left? If you were to ask me, would I rather have a Franco style government or would I rather the communists one? I would rather have the Franco style government, of course, right? I would think that um, with the reputation that the communists have for what they do to the church alone, um, yeah, I mean, it's kind of the nuclear option at that point. But I do think that I don't exactly know how. I know there was the like military during the period of like World War II when things were pretty intense and nobody knew quite which way things were going to go, or just with the Spanish Civil War, right, and the like atrocities that were surrounding that. There was a tighter grip on those things, whereas when things, as you get into the 50s and 60s and 70s in Spain, things loosened up a little bit. But I don't know exactly the process of how everything worked within Spain to say, yeah, this was my concern here. I know that it was a by the time that Franco died, Spain, it was almost like everybody else had sort of moved on into this liberal democratic world. And so to sort of stand alone, there's like a sense in which that's admirable, but I don't know how sustainable it ever would have been. And you can just, I mean, the reality is like it speaks for itself. I mean, um, Spain is not the country 40 years, 50 years later that it was when Franco was alive. And I think part of good government is making a government that's sustainable and that um, outlives the people that initially set up the system of government. You got to have some foresight, and I think that's one of the challenges of all of these kind of 20th century, whether you call them despots or whatever you call them. Many of them, like the countries, just completely shift when the person that the ideologue or whoever or however you want to define them, when that person dies. I mean, you can, from Franco to Mao Zedong, right? When Mao Zedong died, what did China do? When Mao Zedong died, the China switched over to basically um, I mean, there's technically on the books, they're still communist, but they're pretty much just like a mixed capitalist, crony capitalist, protectionist kind of country now. So, yeah, I think that's part of the challenge of, say, somebody like Franco. So, well, I'm coming up at an hour, guys. I think that's all that I've got for you this evening. I do appreciate everyone tuning in. I have what do I got coming out this week? I have Bonaventure, right. So if you haven't watched it, go back. It's not a very long video. Go back and watch my on sense knowledge for Bonaventure, and then you will be well equipped to watch the video that I have coming out in 2 days on Bonaventure's divine illumination, which is a subject that I love. I think Bonaventure is a much everybody loves Bonaventure, but he's not discussed enough as he should be. And those of us Franciscan brothers out there, we're trying to get the team back together, right? We're trying to bring everybody, bring the Franciscans back into the game. So I appreciate you guys tuning in, and I'll talk to you guys soon. God bless you all.
Honey, their coffee can't hold a candle to yours. Instant Folgers taste good as fresh perked.
This is Earth, the year 2100. This is the headquarters of Space Patrol. And men from Earth, Mars, and Venus live and work there as guardians of peace.
In the nation's capital, President Johnson today welcomed British Prime Minister Douglas Hume.